Three little words. We talk a lot about the power of these three little words, and honestly, these might be the most underrated words in any relationship. Sounds frustrating, babe. Yeah. That was all I needed to hear. Let me rewind a little bit. I was in Australia recently visiting my family, and I went to the GP. On my way out of the GP, I was trying to organize a follow-up appointment. The receptionist there was not understanding or didn't seem to be aware of the fact that there were certain doctors that did women's health checkups. So we had this back and forth that went on for way too long until I just said, it's fine, I'll make the appointment online, and I walked out. I walked back into my parents' place fuming. And I vented some of that as I walked into the kitchen. My mum's response was, oh, maybe she's having a bad day. And my brother's response was, what do you expect? It's the public system. Neither of those responses helped me with what I was going through, and I was very aware that that was what I needed. So I walked away from them and I sent a message to my husband, and he came back with, sounds frustrating, babe. That was what I needed to hear in that moment. There was some more back and forth in our conversation, but that was basically what I needed to hear in that moment. The same situation, three different responses, and one of them let me feel deeply seen and satisfied and helped me relax after that encounter. This is the third video in my NVC series. NVC was created by Marshall Rosenberg. It's a way of communicating and connecting with people. And if you haven't seen the other two videos, we looked at observations compared to evaluations, as well as feelings and needs. So I'll put a link in the show notes. I definitely suggest you go back and start with those. Today we're talking about empathetic listening. Specifically, what is it, how to do it, what gets in the way, and the one thing that most people have never been told about empathy. Here's the thing about empathy that nobody tells you. You don't have to agree with someone to give them empathy. You don't have to think that they're right. You don't have to think that their reaction is proportionate to what's going on. Agreement has nothing to do with it. Empathy is about understanding. My mom probably had a point. That receptionist may have been having a bad day. My brother was not wrong that the public system has its limitations. But in that moment, none of that was important to me, because what I wanted was for somebody to recognize that I was feeling frustrated and that I had had a difficult conversation. Empathy doesn't require you to take sides. It requires you to be present. Before we go any further, I want to take a quick moment to talk about the difference between empathy and sympathy, because they are quite similar, but there is an important difference. And I think Brené Brown does a really great job of explaining the difference between them. So sympathy has this distancing effect. It's kind of like looking down on someone a little bit. You might say something like, oh, you poor thing. And the kind of undertone of that is like, oh, that's so terrible for you. I'm so sorry. That must be really difficult for you. Whereas empathy is more of an accompaniment. It stands alongside. It's I witness you. I understand. That makes sense. Okay, let's take a look at some of the things that get in the way of empathy. So there are certain behaviors that are very common, and they often actually come from a really good place, but they actually interfere with giving empathy in an NVC sense. Fair warning, you may see yourself in some of these examples, and that's totally fine if you do. I freely admit to having done many of these, and a lot of them come from a good place. So if you're doing these, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. We're learning all together now, right? I'm going to give you a better option after we go through these. So the first one that we commonly see is fixing and advising. I'm going to put these two together for now. This comes from a place of wanting to help, right? Your friend tells you a problem, you see a possible solution, and you offer it to them. Now, in theory, this seems like a great idea, but a lot of the time when we share our problems, we're actually not looking for a solution. Sometimes we are, and that's totally fine. But sometimes we just want someone to witness what we're going through and be there. Like, I hear you. That makes sense. I can understand why that would be frustrating for you. When we jump to solutions, you might find that people just keep telling you the problem over and over again. That's what happens. When somebody doesn't feel seen, they will repeat themselves and the conversation will be longer. The next one is dismissing, just writing off the experience completely. So this is kind of what my brother did. You know, what did you expect? This is the public system. The subtext is, you know, you're on your own. Like, you should have known better, almost. Yeah, might be true. Did not help me in an emotional sense. Then we can move on to sympathizing. We talked about this a little bit before. Oh, you poor thing. That must be so difficult for you. I'm over here. Everything where I am is okay. Seems like you've got problems though, right? That is not, we're not walking alongside someone with that. Adding fuel to the fire. My personal favorite and all-time default. So in this example, when we add fuel to the fire, we say things like, I can't believe she said that. How dare she? You know, we get in there with them. We share their like indignance, but we're actually not helping them move through the emotions. We're really just kind of getting angry with them. And that can actually feel kind of good, but maybe now you're angry as well. And the person who was sharing with you in the first place has not, if you haven't helped them move past what they're going through. Taking the other person's perspective, like my mum did. Maybe she's having a rough day. You know what? That's basically giving empathy to the other person. And that is generous, but it's not going to make the person who's sharing with you feel any better. Because they've shared with you because they want to be seen. The other person, she's not there. The receptionist, she's gone. She can find empathy from somebody else. But let's not dwell on somebody that's not there, right? Like, you want to support the person that's in front of you. One-upping. Okay, when we one-up somebody's story, we're making it about us. Oh, that's nothing. Let me tell you about the time that I blah, 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 blah. Now we're talking about me and not actually what you brought to share. I have somehow minimized what your problem was and made the whole story about me. Minimizing. So you can just do this on your own without one-upping, right? Could sound something like, oh, well, it's not that bad. Could be worse, right? And usually that's true. It often could be worse, but that also doesn't help the person move through whatever emotional thing they've got going on. And finally, educating or explaining. So this can come in a couple of forms, right? It could be like, well, this is a really great opportunity for you to learn something. And whilst, yes, I am 100% for learning things, we can learn a lesson after we get the empathy. I am much more open to a lesson after somebody sees me and hears me. And I think you'll find that everybody else is the same. Or it could look like into like sharing all of your knowledge about a subject with someone, like, oh, well, she's probably doing that because it's a stress response and blah, blah, blah. You know what? I didn't ask for a TED Talk. So let's do the empathy and then maybe we can get into the academic side of it afterwards. None of these are malicious. They're actually usually well-meaning, right? Like somebody's trying to help you understand something, but they're trying to understand it from an academic sense, or they're just trying to help, they're trying to fix something. They're not malicious, but they actually don't get to the heart of the issue. The reason that we share something is because we want someone to acknowledge and validate our experience. And when somebody launches into an explanation or dismisses it or one-ups it, we miss out on that opportunity to connect. Okay, so what actually is empathy? Well, let me give you a couple of things here. First, I want to introduce this idea of cognitive empathy versus emotional empathy. If you are someone who identifies as an empath, you're probably familiar with the emotional empathy side of things. It's where like somebody says something and you feel their pain with them, right? That can be quite exhausting if you're feeling everybody else's feelings, and I do not recommend that as the way forward. The other one is we have this kind of cognitive empathy, and this is when we can put ourselves in somebody's shoes. So we don't need to imagine it in such a way that it's this visceral, actual feeling for us. We don't have to have the emotions, but we can imagine what it would be like. And here's a formula that's going to help you kind of bridge that gap, right, in an academic sense. So empathy in NVC, we would say, are you feeling X because you need Y? So are you feeling frustrated because you have a need for competence? That was my situation. Are you feeling upset because you had a need for connection. Now, this does sound a little bit like a robot talking, and I understand, but it's a great way to start your practice, right? After that, we can start to move into things that are a little bit more nuanced and sound more like a human speaking. Are you feeling frustrated because that lady wasn't hearing you? Are you feeling upset because you were hoping that your friend was going to call you? These are some more kind of real life examples. We're translating the need into like something like maybe that the person was expecting. And if you're watching this and you're not understanding what the feelings and needs are, go back to the previous video because we talked about those. And there's also going to be a couple of lists in the show notes that you can reference. So using this formula is a really lovely way to connect with people. If you want to start, because it is kind of a lot to begin with, if you want to start with just, are you feeling X? That is a great place to start. Needs are the next level, but they really demonstrate that you are leaning in, that you're curious, and that you want to understand what's going on for that person. Because ChatGPT can say, I understand, right? This is the next level. This is actually showing understanding. It's not just using the words, I understand or I hear you. So if you guess and you get it wrong, don't worry about it. It's not an issue. Someone will offer you a correction. And actually the point of doing this is to help them understand what they're feeling so they get clarity. And if you do it right, you're going to notice a really obvious response to people, right? If you say like, oh, are you annoyed because X happened? And they say, yes, that's exactly it. People have exactly is the word you will hear. People have this really visceral reaction to it. You can see, sometimes you can see the tension leave from their bodies. If it's a text message, like I've had, exactly, exclamation mark, like that's the kind of thing that you'll see. And people love it when you do this, okay? So if you get good at doing this, people are gonna start telling you their stuff all the time, and then you're gonna have to start working on boundaries. So stick around because there'll be a boundary video coming up as well. We'll be working on that. So you don't have to agree with someone to be able to give them empathy, right? Somebody could tell me a whole story and I could think that, oh, actually that sounds a bit unreasonable or whatever, but I can identify with their feelings and needs because remember, needs are universal and we all have feelings as well. I don't need to agree with the specifics of it, but I can understand frustration or loneliness or disconnection, whatever it is. I can relate to that without agreeing with what that person is going through. So here's what I want to leave you with. This week, when someone comes to you with something, and it could be a complaint, right? So I know some people don't like it when people complain. My husband is one of them. If somebody comes to you and it sounds like a complaint, I want you to pause for a moment before you respond. Try to identify what the feeling is. Try to connect with the need under that feeling. If you can't, it's fine. If you forget and you jump straight to fixing that problem or start telling a story about yourself, also fine. Let's just use that as information, right? Like now we're going to start to uncover what is your go-to, because we all do have some kind of behavior that we like to default to in these situations. So even just knowing what that is still really valuable information. So you don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to have the right words. It's really just about leaning in, bringing that curiosity and trying to focus on feelings and needs. And if this is landing with you and you want to go deeper, I'm currently running a workshop series on exactly these kinds of practices. So take a look at the link in the show notes and hopefully you can join me for that one. This is something that we do practice in the group and people really loved it in the first round, and I'm going to bring it back as an activity because being seen and being heard is such a fundamental human need. Okay, in the next video in this series, we're going to take a look at making requests. So that'll be step 4 of the NVC process. And that is something that I think a lot of us struggle about. I've made another video about why we have such a hard time asking for what we need. So that link will be in the show notes as well. If you're into this kind of thing, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out in the next video. And let me know in the comments which of these blockers is your go-to. So mine was definitely for years adding fuel to the fire, but I would love to hear what other people's go-to is. I'll see you in the next one.